Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and today we are talking about essential players, those essential players in FPL that we all want to pick. Now I know what some of you guys are thinking already. Technically guys, there is no such thing as an essential player. Well, yeah, technically you are correct, but when we talk about essential players in FPL, what we really mean is those players that you'd be pretty crazy to be going without. And I do think there are a few players that fit into that category of I don't see an FPL team that can function without these players. I mean, technically it could, but it would be pretty crazy to go without these players. And then a few more other players who come close to being in that real kind of must-have category. So, guys, we're going to be going through those players today. If you do enjoy the video, please do leave a like. Really helps out the channel. And do subscribe if you haven't done already as well. Speaking of essentials, guys, if you're looking for the top pick for web safety and anonymity, today's video is sponsored by Surfshark, a VPN service that keeps your identity safe online. It's basically like installing 3 premium defenders to your PC or mobile phone. But not only this, Surfshark allows you to browse the internet as if you were in a different country. If you don't have access to certain football channels and networks in your country, no problem, set your location to somewhere else using Surfshark and you can now access it. Maybe you want to watch Match of the Day or Sky Go from on holiday and it's not working, or you're getting that annoying this content is unavailable in your country message. No problem, you can switch up your country to somewhere else. But here's my favorite part. If you've watched everything on Netflix and want to unlock all the content on USA Netflix, for example, you can easily do so. You can switch your countries faster than I can switch those non-essential players out of my FPL team. Protect your identity, be safe online, and access web content around the world wherever you are. And you can now get 83% off and 3 months extra for free. Just use promo code FPLMate, all one word, to get this offer, or you can simply click in the link in my description. It really helps support the channel and you get a great service for a heavily discounted price. And if you somehow don't like it, there's also a 30-day money-back guarantee there, so everyone wins. Okay, guys, we'll start off with an almost essential player, and then we'll work towards the more essential players, I guess. But Jesus is probably close to essential, mostly because of his ownership. I think there's several reasons that can make a player either more or less essential in FPL. One of the reasons is ownership, and we've seen Jesus is well above 60% ownership right now. He could even go as high as 70% by the game week 1 deadline. It has been floating around those mid 60% at the moment, which is just a crazy amount. You know, we're talking 2/3 of all FPL players have this player in their team, and it's one of those situations where if he does really well, and he could really do so well, you know, he is the main man at Arsenal now, the focal point, the centerpiece of this Arsenal team, doing really well in pre-season, and his previous data suggests that he's a pretty good striker and a capable assister as well. He could get some decent points, and if he does and you don't have him in your team, you're going to be in very big trouble, because 2/3 of all FPL players will have just got FPL points that you have missed out on, which is definitely not something you want to have happen to you. So super high ownership, really good value at 8 million, and I can kind of understand why people are kind of almost considering him essential at this point. I don't think he is quite essential, but in terms of ownership alone, no player is more highly owned than Jesus. No player in FPL has the potential to do more damage to your rank if you don't have him in your team, and for that reason, I think he has to get a mention in this video. Okay, next up we've got Cancelo. I'm not sure if he is essential or not. I don't think he's essential personally, or certainly not quite essential, but from reading comments on my YouTube videos and on having kind of discussions on Twitter, there is really this opinion that Cancelo is this super essential player that you really absolutely must have and you can't go without. That seems to be a fairly unanimous opinion, and maybe I'm actually wrong on this one. Like, I'm happy, you know, if everyone is saying one thing and I'm saying the other thing, it's probably because I'm wrong, not because all of you guys are wrong. So I'm happy to take the L on this one. Maybe Cancelo is essential. Obviously, he did really, really well last season. He became almost nailed. I think because of his fitness levels, he has the potential to play, you know, maybe not 38 games, but I think he could get similar amounts of numbers to last season. The only thing that would change that, I guess, is if Man City do sign a left back before the transfer deadline in the Premier League. If so, then maybe Cancelo can afford to be rotated just a little bit, but he's not a player that necessarily needs to be rotated. It's probably going to damage Walker more than it would Cancelo if a new left back was to sign, and maybe Cancelo moves out onto the right. The only thing that's always bugged me about Cancelo is the fact that he seems to be a little bit better for FPL points when he's playing on the left, because it allows him to cut in on his strong stronger right foot and play those inside passes and take shots from his inside, from his inside foot rather than his outside foot, which, gives him more opportunities to score FPL points, of course, because we're talking shots, we're talking assists and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of hope that Man City don't sign a new left back, because that is going to make Cancelo pretty nailed on. He's going to be getting the similar points that he did last season. The amount of shots he takes every single game is pretty crazy, so maybe a few more of them can sneak in, although he does usually take shots from range, kind of low XG kind of areas. But certainly an insane FPL pick, a player that is probably well worth the 7 million. Is he essential? To me, no, but he is another one of those players who is kind of close to being in that category. Okay, a slight change of pace here, because we're going to go for Nico Williams as another almost essential player, and the reason is because, he is just such a good bargain, like such good value for money. Like, everyone knows this by now. He is getting really high ownership by now. He's well over 20% owned at this point, because people are kind of recognizing this 4 million defender is going to outscore most 4.5 million defenders. And when you spend 4 million on a defender, you're essentially spending nothing on a defender, because that's a minimum you can spend. So if you are, using a formation in your FPL team where you have 4 at the back, your 5th defender, who is going to be on your bench, probably should be Williams. It probably should be Nico Williams. I can't really think of a player another player really, that I would be very, very keen to have. Obviously, there are some other options. You can go a little bit differential, but I think Williams, for that 5th defender slot in a 4 or a 3 defender formation, is just absolutely perfect. He doesn't cost you anything. He's going to outscore a lot of the players that are more expensive than him. He's nailed on. He's going to be playing in an advanced right wing back position. He's playing for a defence that is kind of known of being a little bit tough, a little bit rigid kind of thing. So maybe they can keep a few clean sheets. We've seen promoted teams come up to the Premier League and be difficult to play against. Maybe don't score a lot of goals, but don't concede many goals either. So maybe Nottingham Forest can become that team. And if so, Williams at 4 million is going to look like the most insane steal in the whole of the Premier League. So a player who, again, is not quite essential, especially if you're using a 5 at the back formation, you want to play with 5 defenders, then in which case Nico Williams is, definitely not essential. But depending on who you are, a lot of you guys are running with 4 at the back formations. I do think Williams is the ideal bench defender, the perfect bench defender, and that's why he is pretty much almost essential. Now, in a similar vein, we've got Andreas Pereira, who I do think maybe straddles the line, and I don't know, is this a player I would consider essential? I kind of think so, because not a lot of people are going for a 5-man midfield. So if you're playing with 5 starting midfielders, then yeah, maybe Andreas Pereira is just not really the guy for you. But if you're not, and I'm kind of looking at a lot of FPL teams, very few people are going with 5 midfielders, in which case you've got to have a bench midfielder. I would not be looking to spend too much money on the bench. In fact, right now I'm looking to spend the absolute minimum on the bench. And that brings us to Pereira, a 4.5 million midfielder, so a midfielder that essentially costs you nothing, because he's the cheapest a player can possibly be. And what is so special about Pereira that we've not kind of seen in a number of seasons, and we kind of rarely see it in FPL, is we have a 4.5 million midfielder that is an attacking midfielder. Usually the 4.5 million midfielders are either players who are literally not going to get any game time whatsoever, or they're very deep defensive type midfielders. But in Andreas, we have an attacking midfielder, and not just an attacking midfielder, a player who, if pre-season data is to go by, he's also going to be on some set pieces as well. So 4.5 million, you get a midfielder who's playing in an advanced position, so he's not going to get you just the 2 points as you typically expect from a 4.5 million midfielder. He actually has the potential to get a few more points than that. Last season, playing for Flamengo, did pretty well actually overall. Not like amazingly, but he scored a decent amount of goals, got a couple of assists, and in those other competitions in Brazil as well, he did quite well, and he did impress. Flamengo really wanted to keep this player. They obviously couldn't because of financial difficulties over there, but he's come over to he's come over to Fulham, I guess, down from Manchester, and they're going to be playing him pretty much every single game, and I think he's going to make an absolute mockery of that 4.5 million price tag. I'm not saying he's going to compete with the likes of Salah or De Bruyne or anyone like that, but he's still going to do pretty well. I think he's still going to do very well, and insanely well for that price tag. So for that reason, I am actually going to stick my neck out here and say, if you are running a formation with 4 midfielders, and most of you guys will be, then Andreas Pereira is essential. Right, that brings us on to Salah, who I'm sure a lot of people will agree is very, very close to being essential. Even if you don't think he's essential, you must at least admit that he is close to being essential, right? I think he's essential. Like, I've spoken about this before. There is no player in there's no FPL team that I've seen that doesn't have Salah in that I've looked at and said, you know, that looks good. There's always, you know, if you have an FPL team with no Salah in it, it always looks like there is something missing, something crucial missing. You can look all around all of the team, you can have all these wonderful players, you realise there's no Salah in that team, and then it's kind of like, okay, maybe this team is not so good. That's just my opinion on it. I'm sure a lot of you guys agree as well. Salah obviously is known to be possibly the best FPL asset of all time. Last season, obviously top scorer in the league in terms of FPL points and in terms of goals. Also got an insane amount of, a decent amount of assists as well. Like, he's just an absolutely crazy player who shoots so much, gets so much XG, takes so many shots, takes penalties, is the, you know, centerpiece, not literally, but, you know, he's a centerpiece in the jewel in Liverpool's attacking crown, I suppose, and he has so much going for him. And even in the second half of the last season, where people really went off Salah. People were like, yeah, I don't like Salah anymore. I don't think he's essential anymore. Even in that second half of the season, a lot of that was to do with him going to AFCON. A lot of that was to do with the fact that he had 5 substitute appearances in that second half of the season. So he actually only started 30 games last season, which is something that not a lot of people speak about. And also, even in that dry spell, that barren spell, he was still taking an insane amount of shots, having an insane amount of XG, you know, creating so much. He was just sadly underperforming on those stats. And in these slightly smaller periods of time, you can sometimes see anomalies in these kind of trends. But his underlying stats were still absolutely phenomenal. It wasn't that he wasn't shooting as much or getting as much of the ball or that he wasn't as crucial to his team. He just wasn't finishing as many chances as he would do typically. So his stats suggest that he's still an absolutely crucial part of this Liverpool attack. You know, he always starts the seasons very well. He's a player who's well known to going nuclear in game week 1. I think he's essential. I think you absolutely must have him. I'm sure some of you guys will disagree. Like, something that seems to be the case is that those people who don't have Salah in their team, like, they're like people who do CrossFit or people who are vegans. If they don't have Salah in their team, you'll know it because they will tell you they don't have Salah in their team. So I don't know. The vocal people who don't have Salah, I'm sure, will be absolutely screaming at me in the comments. But to me, he's essential. All right, one final player in this list, and it's Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I do think is probably the most essential player in FPL. Like, even if you don't agree on Salah or PEREIRA, or you don't want to go for Jesus, you don't want to go for any of the other players mentioned in this video, I'm sure you still want to say that you want Alexander-Arnold, which is kind of a little bit crazy because I think his ownership is only around 50%. I say only, that is still crazy high, but Alexander-Arnold is just such a super essential player, and he was you know, owned by more than 50%, well more over 50% of players last season, at the beginning of last season. So I'm not really sure why people have gone off him at the beginning of this season. He's still 7.5 million, which is just a crazy good price. And I think the difference between Alexander-Arnold and some of the other players that we kind of talk about as essential is that price. The fact that he's 7.5 million. Yes, you can probably get close to his points with a Robertson or a Cancelo, but why would you skimp on that? Like, he's only 7.5 million. We know he's going to outscore all of the 7.5 million midfielders. We know he's going to outscore all of the 7.5 million forwards. We know that he is such good value for money. Why would you kind of say, oh, I'm going to cut corners and spend 0.5 million less? Why would you say, oh, I'm going to, you know, go for a cheaper defence? We know that the premium defenders are what it's all about this season already. There's no reason, in my mind, to not go for Alexander-Arnold. Like, who are you choosing instead of him, and why? I don't understand why you would leave him out. Like, fair enough if you want Robertson or you want Cancelo, but is it really that difficult to just find that extra 0.5 to get a player who over the last 3, maybe even 4 years, has been consistently the ultimate defender in FPL? And if you still want to have Cancelo and you still want to have Robertson, why not have both? Why not have all three? There's no reason to not have Alexander-Arnold in your FPL team, in my opinion. And for that reason, and you know, well, obviously how good he is, because you guys know how good he is. He scores goals, he gets an insane amount of assists, probably the best creative player in the league, excluding maybe De Bruyne, gets insane amount of clean sheets because he's playing in a top tier defence and has amazing fixtures to start the season. He is essential. To me, he's essential, and anyone who doesn't have Alexander-Arnold in their team is crazy. He's essential. Technically, no, he's essential. Don't technically me, he is, in my opinion. Right, there we go, guys. That's the end of the video. If you did enjoy this one, please do leave a like. Please do subscribe if you're new around here as well. And tell me in the comments, guys, one player that you believe is essential. They don't have to be a player mentioned in this video, although they can be if you want them to be. But yeah, very much interested to hear some of your opinions on essential players and who is, you know, not literally essential, but, you know, FPL essential. You know what I'm saying by this point, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Plenty more content to come. Exciting content as well. Don't forget to check out Surfshark, link in the description. And I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.